So this one is kind of I mainly did two projects this half of the year, and then one is like what I made at Norfolk. I tried to turn it into a book format, and I made some progress trying to finish it up. And then this one is a different one. This one is like a printmaking project. I like a week ago sent a link in the group chat and stuff. It's like pulling out random, just a bunch of like assorted, curated like imagery, and then a printmaking project, kind of overlaying stuff from different origins together, and then see what kind of like meaning or like there's an undertone that arises from there. It's kind of my thing. It's like kind of historical reflection kind of like stuff. And then I have made 5 plates. It's photo covergraph. So the technique is that you pour screen printing emulsion on a plate, and then you use like a Photoshop design. You print them on transparency, and you expose it, and you can print the plate entirely. And like 5 of them. First one is like a monument kind of like scene, and second one is a screenshot of my computer with someone else's photo in the middle of it, and then third one is a fun photo with this little kid in an army cap, which is fun. I think the quality is like okay, photo quality, maybe not super, but it's okay. I still have to take individual photos of my prints. And then this one is it's a Stalin print. It's from a still, like the middle part is like a still from a 1960 something Polish film, and it's like a group of students working on a Stalin billboard, and then because they covered the finished part with newsprint and then work on the other, and they just at the end they found out they accidentally copied the eyes of Stalin twice, and they got into serious trouble because of that. And at the top you can see like a kind of inverted image with Stalin's eyes. That's from another kind of like underground literature-ish thing. It's called Stalin's 100th birthday. It's like a bunch of like defaced Stalin posters. And then this fifth one, it's one of the, I think it's the biggest stadium. It's at that time, it's finished in 1957. It's the Beijing Workers Stadium. It's like for sports and stuff, built for that, but it's very like heavily used during the Cultural Revolution as like a political rally. And then there's a bunch of people like I don't know, like being crazy in there. They also hold like a public trial and execution there. And then this is image from that, and they chop the bottom off and then put it on the top, kind of like so it's kind of like assorted imagery. I was thinking like maybe history being a little bit cyclical or like a little bit dystopian at times. What can I read? What can I reflect from it? And accompanying these 5 big ones are these little ones. It's using the same plate printed using a light gray ink, and then I screen printed on top of it. It's like some kind of text thing, just assorted like font text. Most of these like sources, images and text are like found and just like compiled like I don't know, like into like a batter and then fried, kind of, and then kind of get this whole project rising out of a bunch of gunk. But I think it's interesting. This one I want to mention. This one's really interesting. I don't know if this is zoomed in or not. Yes, okay. This one is a Chinese elementary school English textbook. It's talking about like how 2 words together, like sometimes like when you pronounce it, the kind of the last syllable of the previous word connects with the first syllable of the second word, and then it's kind of listen carefully to this and practicing saying it. And I kind of like photoshopped and switched it around to become like a poetry kind of situation, like it's like this Second one, the B one, is like, there is 3 exercises. Here are code drink, white cat, and hard time. And it's like kind of like rhythmic thing. I was like, I should put that in, and I did. Zoom back, please. Okay. Cool. Probably be eating up a lot of time. I also have the link in my presentation. You can find it on my website. It's on a page, and then can read more of the text if you guys want to. Okay, so maybe so much for this one. And like, I wrote this statement here. It's like on this right panel. It's like, the title is Shesko Nanik, and then question mark. So like kind of like a realization if all that we've been through, and then looking throughout history, like the fake promises or like fake signs of progression, is it all vain, or like it's kind of like a, I don't know, grief process? I don't know. Okay, share this tab instead. Slideshow. Cool. And this is just the one I just shared, and then the book project I did something like this for my process club for Norfolk, and it's like kind of like found the literature and then cyanotyped. I want to kind of transform it into like a portable version or something like that, just so I don't have to I know any place and by anyone, it can just being read. I was just thinking I pasted that board during the process club. It's kind of like a, I don't know, impermanent, kind of like a makeshift display, and just thinking zines and stuff as another way of like just having multiple copies, and then maybe not extremely like craftsmanship made. Be another good way to do it. The content of it is, I kind of did a bunch of, pulled some of the cyanotypes. I pulled the original. Wait, I think I'm missing a slide. Is, but anyways, kind of like the original. I heard, like, I just see another person pop up, and it's like, wait, how can I? Okay, here. It's like the book, and I had this page from the literature, and I kind of like doubled it, and like I did at the process club, and then kind of used this receipt printer kind of thing, like did some translation by myself again, and then typed it, and these on the left kind of legible, and the rest of the thing is not really legible, like doubled over and this and that. This one I got inspired by the one of the readings was talking about the Chinese poet, and then a transliteration table, and I kind of like did that. This bunch of meanings, and you can connect this one just in between the options, and kind of like understand it, or like for to understand it or to misunderstand it, to like give space for like a different kind of meaning to come into play here. And yeah, a bunch of just blown up spreads like here. Yeah, I did a few like for the book like thing before I really started doing art, and I loved it. I feel like I need to do more book stuff, and then just tried last semester. It's kind of like a project, independent project for class, and then yeah, I feel like it's pretty much there. I need to do some finalizing the content and stuff, and then maybe do a like little production run. I do like 10, 20 copies and just print them out and then bind them by hand and call it the end of the project. Also, I wrote a bunch of fake diary kind of entries, or like stuff to be added into the like here to be it's sharing to be like it's like inserts in the middle of it, like these. I was thinking how should I because I want to have an artist statement kind of like thing for this book, but I also don't want to like, oh, this project is this and that, and then oh, the artist did. I don't want the formal stuff, so I kind of want to have a personal voice in there. So I wrote a bunch of fake kind of like diary entry on how these literature inspired me to think of and why is it important to me and this and that, and then I just kind of like print them out as inserts and then just sandwich them in the book. I have the book with me. Yes, I just want to show you guys the book before I end. I think I've been talking over time, but it's okay. I did like a Coptic stitch kind of like thing. Printed a bunch of some of these are like just laser printed, but I actually have a signature. This is like I'm gonna just print up 20 or so like just original cyanotype and then bind in the middle of it, and then also having these kind of text stuff going on. Okay, pretty much that's it. I'm done. Thank you.
This is like slightly related, but I thought about it a lot when you were talking about like making books and stuff. I'll find the artist because I forgot her name, but she was like a resident at like this place in Brooklyn, and she made language out of like physical objects from nature. And even though it's like not the same thing as what you do, she made this book that she like hand like sewn up all of her drawings, and each like she had objects that were that she assigned like language to, and that made me think a lot about like the text, like the character text that you would assign English language to. And like it was just like the same type of like vibe where it was like you're doing cyanotypes and you're like hand binding it and putting these like physical papers into like a book. And she was doing these books where she would like hand make them, and they were like really long, and there was like no way you could print it professionally. It was like you had to make it by hand. And that was like,
Yes.
I don't know, a lot of like between you and that artist, I feel like there's lots of poetics there. So I'll find it and I'll put it in, like I'll send it to you. But made me think of you.
One particular image I was like really fascinated by was like the screenshot of your computer screen that you had physically printed. And it's like I feel like the reason why I'm so fascinated by that is because like this idea of like that image being mediated so many times, you know, of it's this like already quite obscure photograph that you're like looking at on your computer screen. And then you take this screenshot of it, and then you physically print this screenshot. And like it in a lot of ways, like that actual image, the way we're seeing it here, feels like so far mediated and so far removed from like the original photograph. And I feel like it's like quite a beautiful parallel with like a lot of the ways you talk about translation in language, or like the sort of like blurriness of translation within language. And this idea of like mediation is something I'm super fascinated by.
Thank you. I was just thinking, because this one, like all the others are like a form of photo or something like that, and this one has a like computer interface in there, though it's not extremely obvious. Kind of have to look into it a little bit to find out. But I was like, when I was making, I was like, does this one break the pattern, or like being weird, or like just staring it, like having too much crazy elements in there and make the project disintegrate? And I was like, maybe not. And then maybe that marked it's like a hallmark of me doing this project. And then later, as I'm like in the middle of like wrapping up, I completely stopped caring about how my project would look like. I just, oh, this is cool, include that, and then let's see how it goes.
And there's something about like the web browser imagery that almost feels out of place, or there's something like a little bit like dysphoric about it almost aesthetically with it, with just because of like the nature of the photograph that you're displaying, which is like the sort of like peculiarity of it is like, again, it feels like an echo of like the way that you're like working with like translating language or like mistranslating language, you know?
Mm-hmm. See.
There's this artist that just had a solo show at my school last year. Her name is Celia Alvarez Munoz, and she's a Chicana feminist artist from El Paso. And she had this work that I remember titled, I think, like, which came first? Because you know that common question of like the chicken or the egg.
Mhm.
And it had like these eggs pictured, but then like, you know, when you're like in school in elementary and you're learning how to write, it's like this very specific like lines that you're trying to like write on. And she says something about like the chicken lied first or something, because she like had to learn English growing up here, and it's very I don't know how to explain it, but I would really like to share you like this link to this article that she explains that work, because I feel like that work that you just showed about like the children's like, you know, translation part, I think that there's some similarities. But yeah. Anyways,
Been trying to find the show. Maybe, yeah, be super helpful if you can find a link or something.
I can go.
Yay!
If this works, you can see.
Yeah.
Okay. Present question mark full screen. Oh. Okay. So this is my work post. Well, actually, this one was before Norfolk, but it didn't make it to the Pecha Kucha there because it was after my submission. So y'all weren't able to see this unless you've like seen it on my Instagram or something. But so this was right before Norfolk, and I'm obviously interested in the figure, and with this one at the time I was doing a lot of research on the femicides in Mexico, because it's really bad in Juarez, which is the city that connects to El Paso. And there's this girl who is also like a student leader on campus, and she's the Latin American Council president. Her name is Carla, and I've like looked up to her for her community engagement, and just like, you know, she's just an activist herself, and I feel like I really wanted to I feel like she just had stories to tell. Like I didn't even know her, but I wanted to get to know her, and I was like, dude, I would really like to paint you. And she talked to me about her experience with violence against women and her family. She's from Oaxaca, which is like the main thing that I want to get to. She's from Oaxaca and she's lived there most of her life. And so her being in the United States now, it's just been very different. And so I wanted to depict her as a modern Adelita, which is the women who fought in the Mexican Revolution. And these women, this was the first time they really had the power to, like, women had the power to, not the power, the ability to have like armor on them and like, you know, be somewhat equal with the men. And I've done a lot of readings about how the women back then, they would not take like any sexual harassment even within like their own army, because there was just a lot of men who would try to get at them. But with this new sort of age of like, we're fighting too and stuff, we don't have to take shit from the, like, our own people too. Like, it's not, they weren't just fighting against like the other people, it was also against their own. So this one was like an 8-foot painting, and I really, really had fun with this one. And so there's that one. Next one, post Norfolk, I did some mural work. So I did some work about science murals and this was part of a program. This was a group group mural, but talking about endemic species. So this was my first time like really collaborating with a lot of people. So it was just an interesting, very interesting process. Working with a lot of people. And so here's another one we did together. And yeah. And so then this one was also in the summer, right before school started, also during school. This was an independent mural that I was selected to do. And this was about women in war. And here there's another Adelita, like a real Adelita to the left. There's Clarissa Barton. She created the Red Cross, Sojourner Truth, and then the Teste, Apache Warrior. And so, yeah, so it was like crazy going from like working with so many people to like just working by myself. It was like a very drastic, and both have their pros and cons. I will say that. Next. Oh, this is a really bad picture. This is my ceramic work. I took 2 ceramics classes. One was sculptural, which was this one. And so I created 3 sculptures, and they were all vehicles that I see crossing the border, but they're all exaggerated is what I'm getting at here. This is a really bad picture because low-key, after I got critiqued, I want to fix some things about them. But anyway, so there's like this really, really exaggerated semi truck that goes from like short to like long, and don't look. And then here's a truck. Can you guys see my mouse? Yeah, okay. So here's a truck. I didn't take a good angle of it, but it's like a comedic amount of things piled up on it. And then here's a street vendor cart with a giant mango. And then also I was working with mixed media, so here I welded this cart, this funky looking cart. But that's how I wanted it to look, very rusty and stuff. And then I have some like string on this one. But yeah, I need to work on it, but that's what I did in my ceramics class. And then welding. So I was in sculpture, and it was a heavy metal class this semester, and I really, really enjoyed it. So this first assignment, I just totally went abstract, like no meaning to it at all. I just wanted to like, weld some things together, and what I really wanted to do was try to see how like different positionings of like generally the same objects can look very, very different by the way that you put them together in different ways. And so like all of these have these rings, each one has like a skinnier one, and then each one has like a flat one, but they all look very different. And I think this one turned out to be my favorite one. And it was the one that I had the most trouble with because I don't know. Anyways, so that was my first project of 3 for my sculpture class. Okay. Then here is my second project. This one, I titled it Release Me. So we, at the time, my class was talking about kitsch and what do we think is kitsch in our own communities, or no, just to like, my professor had asked, like, what do you think is kitsch? And there are some things that I had been thinking about for a while. And there's this thing that I've been like thinking about for a long time, how for Dia de los Muertos, which is the Mexican holiday of Day of the Dead, there's a lot of like things in my community that have showed up to be like, I don't know how to explain it. It's just like I think about AI a lot because a lot of restaurants in my city and in my area, they have like AI generated Catrinas, which is the women who are dressed up as like with the face paint and like the flowers and stuff like that. And it looks very general, and a lot of them, they look, and like in merchandise too, like Target sells very general, Day of the Dead merch and stuff. And I just feel like there's no there's no cultural charge to any of this anymore, like it feels like, and it's just gotten very generalized. And I feel like it's like the women that are represented, they look very I don't, what's the right word? I don't know. It's like quiet and like they have no personality to them. And so you think about, just mortality and dying and stuff. It's just like it's not always a peaceful thing, and it doesn't always have to be, and it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. So I wanted to do like a Katrina, like kind of flying out of her skirt, um with all the rust. It's a very, very rusty piece, and I added some spray paint. Because we were also talking about David Smith and Greenberg, how he didn't like paint on steel. And so just I was just sort of going with this assignment, but I think I really liked how it turned out, because I had been thinking about this for a while and I just didn't know what I should paint about it or what. And so turns out I didn't have to paint about it. I could just sculpt about it. So there was that one. And then my last sculpture for welding, my welding class, was this one. And we as in my class, we talked a lot about how can we be mindful as artists with the things that we are taking from this earth and creating with, like, with climate change and global warming. How are we affecting all of that as artists, and do we really make a difference or whatever? And so with steel specifically, I mean, we're extracting and we're making things out of this that, like, the gases are bad that come out of it, but steel can be recycled forever and ever and ever. So it's just thinking about that. And so we just had to do an assignment thinking about that. And I thought about how it's very like straightforward, but I think the more I can write about it, the more I can. Hold up.
Hey girl, everyone's leaving.
Everyone's
You
leaving?
want to say hi. Everybody.
Tell them I'm in the meeting. Okay. Anyways, so this is my take on the border, because all of that is steel. All of that is steel, and why are we extracting so much just to divide? We're extracting from the earth to divide the earth, which is like, it's very simple, but I don't think people really get it. And so this one, I specifically did not make it rusty how it actually is in real life. I like knocked off the rust in order for us to get like closer to the core of what this actually is. It really is just a racist monument that's gonna be here when we all die, I think, till the end of existence, And so this was my sculpture on that. And I'm also getting around to the fact that I don't have to make something super detailed in order for me to like what I make. Because I remember I was talking to Isaiah when I was in the middle of doing this project, and I was like, man, I just finished welding this, but I feel like I should add more and stuff. Because I feel like this is very simple, but I think the research behind it carries it more than its looks, maybe. I don't know. I'm a very representational person, and I feel like, oh, there should be some color, or there should be some this, that. No. So anyways, I like how this one turned out. So there's that one. And then here's my painting. This semester, I really had trouble with coming up with paintings. I took an independent study, so I could make whatever I wanted. But I was like required to make a report of like the things I was planning on doing for the semester, and I just didn't know what I wanted to make. And I was looking through some old photo reference that I had taken, because I like to take pictures of people in like events around my city and stuff. And there is this one of this little girl that I really, really loved how she looked, because she was like, this hand that she has up here, she was like putting it on her mom that was looking the other way, and this little girl looked like she was looking out before her mom. And I was like, I really want to do something with her. I just don't know how. And post Norfolk, a lot of what I remember is like someone telling me like, oh, how can you take care of the people that you're representing? And this one, I don't know how detailed I want to get into it, but I was learning about abstract expressionists barely, but I learned about them. And so I was getting to like, I don't have to render everything out, you know, every single little piece of my painting. And so the background is I put my body into that one. And then if you can see to the right of her, I like did some sort of, I don't know, experimenting with, I don't know, it's not even crazy or anything. It's just like something very different from what I've done. And so I like put some gesso, but then painted over it. So it could be sort of hidden, but because my biggest question for this one was like, how can you paint intuition if it's not a real thing, a real physical thing? And I was like, yeah, so there's a story behind it. Also, I figured out that like when I was painting abstract or whatever, I know I wanted to paint a car, and when I was like getting around to painting this, I was like, wait, it already appeared, because like this, I never really painted that. It was just what was left for me to do in the background, and I was like, it already looks like a car, and all I did was add the headlights. And so I don't know, this is just a very different painting from what I'm used to doing, but I really loved it. So then I made a frame for it, and this was my first frame that I ever did on a painting, and this is a steel frame because yeah, so well, actually, let me tell you guys that I showed you guys the murals that I did about endemic species, science murals. So I learned about plants that are native to this land, but also that only grow in this land, like they don't grow anywhere else. And so we have the purple prickly pear cactus, and so that's where her shirt like was inspired from. So I sort of like just connected the dots, and that's where she's inspired from. And so I was like, why should I stop like intervening with the audience through the painting? Why can't I just like actually go into their space and, you know, make an extra dangerous frame so you don't get close to her? And so that's what I did. And I just wanted to see how the light would also fall like over here on the wall and onto the painting, like right here. I really loved how that turned out. So there was that painting. And then this was my final painting. So this semester I didn't paint a lot, which is like kind of sad to me, but I feel like I developed my practice through thinking sculpturally in my paintings. And so before I say anything about that, there's this painting, a portrait. I love doing portraits. And so this cactus is one that I pass by every day at my house, you know, walking to and from school. And I loved, you can't see it, but it goes through the fence. And I loved how it like at the bottom, it like you can see the decay, but then it's still like thriving up here. And so I was just gonna paint the nopales, but then I was like, there is all this empty space, and I was like, it would be really cool if it was just like a portrait, you know. And this was a really different painting as well, because I was like, why do I always have to paint something that makes sense? Why can't I just do something, I don't know, just because I feel like it or whatever? Because that was a lot of my struggle this semester. It was like I was overthinking a lot of things and like the meaning behind every painting and everything that I do. And it's just like, okay, not everything has to be like that, and the meaning will find itself later. And so it has for me. So this is, yeah, a beautiful portrait. I think this is beautiful because I really like her. And so then I did a frame for it because I was like, right, I just want to keep imitating, you know, what is infinite, because I feel like this plant is infinite. And if you were to see like artists here in my region, everyone paints a cactus, everyone paints nopales, everyone like identifies with it. And I was thinking of the idea of like something that has been in over and over and it feels infinite. And, you know, maybe how can I make it different, or how can I add to that sort of identity that we all share in common, but make it my own? And so, yeah, there's this one. And then I did this mural last month during finals. We were talking about the history of New Mexico, and really quick, this is the Black migration west. And so people flee Georgia, and then they created this town called Blackton because they wanted freedom, but they try to go to Albuquerque, and they were racist over there, so they just created their own little city called Blackton. And so they created that, but then a drought happened, and so then they had to move closer to where Las Cruces is, which is where I go to school, and they moved to Vado. And so there's like some historic buildings here and stuff. And so because there's been a lot of conversation about my school's mascot, which is Pistol Pete, which is a white cowboy with guns, and how he was actually a really bad guy. Like the mascot is from an actual person. And so, how can we counter that with like having Black cowboys who are real and good people, and put this in the institution. So I didn't say this, but this is inside one of the buildings on campus, that is here to come, because there's been a lot of talk about these problematic murals that have been in the campus. And so we're trying to get rid of that. Like it's just so dated, and how can we bring color back to the school and stuff, and whatever. There's that. Oh, I think that's the last thing I have. I feel like I missed something. No, I think this is a lot of what I've done this semester. But yeah. Anyways, how do I exit?
I'm kind of obsessed with your frames, like the frames that you made for each like painting, because they're like in conversation with the painting, and like I don't know, they're just so I've never seen anything like that where it's like so assertive to like the audience, and I like the idea of like just like an art handler who's like, no hate, but like a white guy art handler that like got shipped your painting, be like, oh, like yes, fuck you. No, but like in the context of everything, it makes it's a good like image in my mind.
Yeah. That's so funny because it did get shipped out to a museum at Sul Ross University, and the white curator was like, "What the?" But he liked it. It was exciting because it was actually, I was showing, or I am still currently showing. The show goes down in February, exhibition, but I'm like showing with like actual like Chicano legends that from this region, and something as simple as a frame made it so much different from all the work that they've created in the past. Like it was interesting to see the contemporary versus, what I've learned from, but how can we develop, everything that has been painted about in my community. And I don't know, how can we elevate it? I don't know, just make it different and fun. But yeah, so it was interesting to see how, for me, I felt like my paintings were very bare when they didn't have frames. And I've never thought about them like that. Like I've never been one to worry about, the presentation of, the frames and stuff like that. But I think once I realized like, this is something I could actually do, and I could actually weld myself, bro, I might as well do it. It's been so fun. So I'm excited to see what I can create this semester. Yeah.
I think it's really interesting. Like, I think it's really interesting. Like you made 2 frames, and the first one is like the cactus like with the pointy like nail kind of needle shape, and that one, the lighting is very like point sourced, and then you can see the cast shadow of it being aligned very pointy, and then some of it pointing out of the painting and some going inside of the frame. And the second one, you have the cactus with the lobes, and then that one is a more like a diffused lighting, so like the shadow is like more like not super sharp, it's kind of fuzzy. I think it's really interesting to see how like kind of like lighting conditions make it just so different.
Yeah, and that's what I really wanted to explore. Yeah, but I will say the second picture that I took, the second frame, it was in a less harsh lighting environment, and I had to brighten it up because it was like too dark. So hopefully if it does show, hopefully the light will affect it more. because that's what I really wanted, but it was really diffused, like you said, in the second one. But yes, exactly.
I feel like
Mhm.
something about the frames that's like really striking for me is the how monochromatic they are in contrast to like how bright and full of color the paintings are. Because it's like there is this like echo of like this sculptural form, um, like echoing something like within the content of the painting, but it also feels very like distinct in a way that it's this like raw, untreated steel,
Mhm.
um, in a way that like it makes it feel like very much like grounded as like this object that's containing this like image in it.
Mhm.
The sort of like it creates this like dramatic relationship between like the sort of objectification of this like steel frame and like
Mhm.
the color of the image inside of it that I think like works quite well, that contrast.
Yeah. Yeah. And to that, I would like to also try to explore patinaing. I there was a demo or something last semester, but my professor, she's really bad at handling the time, so we weren't able to really learn about it. But maybe this semester I can, go into
Yeah,
that.
I feel like there's potential there because also like there's that the other steel sculpture that you like treated with like all
Yeah.
of that color. And it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, I could see like that really working as well.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think like the patina is an option, but then there's also the other side of it too. Like if you polish them very like to like a reflective type of surface situation, that could be really cool too. Or even being selective of like what parts
Yeah.
get polished and parts don't get polished. I think with the one about the border with like the pieces,
Huh?
like you were saying how it was like very simple and didn't have a lot of color, but then in my mind I was saying like if it was like polished like to a really reflective like
Mhm.
uh finish, it would reflect all of the color and all of the everything, so it really like on the surface it isn't very colorful, but from the environment that it could be put in, maybe it could like have this crazy mirror like thing that could like
Mm.
be a bunch of colors. And
Mhm.
also too, I think of with the frame specifically, like zooming in really close and then zooming out, um, because it's like the one frame that has like all the needles on it.
Yes.
That could be like that's like a zoomed in type thing of like what is it on the cactus? Like is it a like what is the nopal like the thing like the what is that
The
called? The part
the
of it?
wing, the wings.
The wing, it's like a zoomed in wing, but then
Yeah.
on the other one you have it like zoomed
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And then I also think with like the truck, the Walmart truck, like
Mhm.
I noticed the tires are like warped. So then I'm
Yeah.
thinking of like warping as well, and also like transportation and like uh even like warping and compression of like distance and
Mhm.
like I don't know. I think I was just talking actually about like the interstate or like highways or something like specifically in like America and how like connected everything is, and that's kind of craziness. But then also like in just like thinking of how everything is like different levels and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Thank
Good
you.
work.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Next.
I could go and people see.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm gonna show stuff pre-Norfolk and post-Norfolk. I have a lot of slides, so I'll try to move quickly. Um, this is a dear friend of mine, a high-rise tower that I created, a little skyscraper that rolls around on wheels so I can keep it by my side. It's my lovely little friend. Um, when I made this, I was thinking a lot about the the flexibility and the compliance that's um, part of high-rise buildings in the sense that if a skyscraper was perfectly rigid, it would be so stiff that if the wind blew, it would like just sort of like crack in half. So there's like all of this flexibility and compliance that's designed into skyscrapers. So when the wind blows, they sort of like bend and sway. Um, so I kind of wanted to like play around with that in creating this object that's like really performative in the sense of it's this like sort of uh extreme exaggeration of that kind of flexibility that's like designed in these structural systems. Um, like my idea there is like it's like this sort of effort to like make that more apparent or more visible. Um, the way that this was uh manufactured was all of these little panels were laser cut plexiglass, and I used this little printing press that I designed and built to print the sort of facade of like structural elements of the building on each of the panels. And then I use like a bunch of zip ties basically to attach all of the pieces together kind of loosely. It was like an insane amount of labor to put this together. I kind of have like nightmares about it sometimes. Um, Here is a detail shot of like all of the different printing blocks that I used to print the image of the building on the plexiglass panels. Um, so with this, I was thinking a lot about the sort of the colors and the specific pigments that I chose, kind of echoing the um, structural systems that they were representing. So, for instance, I used this like red iron oxide to print the steel beams and columns. You know, the idea being that I'm like printing a steel column or a steel beam in rust, like the sort of degradation of like that structure. Um, the red is like kind of in reference to this really specific red that is uh, a sort of regulatory standard within like fire safety systems. So if you like look in a building, all of like the bright red sprinkler lines, it's like this very specific red color that's like sort of enforced by like fire safety regulations. And then the ductwork of the building, I printed in this like reflective aluminum pigment. Um, so here you can see that alongside, this was like the first iteration of the foam stage like platform project that I had conducted at Norfolk. Um, which you can see here, at the time I was like really obsessed with like using grids in my work. And in this case, I wanted the grid that I embedded into the surface of the platform to not be necessarily like arbitrary, but I wanted it to be informed by something or like in reference to something. So this is actually what I did is I took like a graphite rubbing with a piece of paper of my dear child, the concrete slab that I carry around with me everywhere. And then I scanned that rubbing of my concrete slab into a computer and made this digital outline, this digital tile of it. And then I sent that file to a big CNC milling machine that sort of took a big router bit and routed out that grid into the surface of the foam. So it's the sort of like impression of my tiled the concrete slab that's kind of tiled across the surface of the platform. So moving on to post Norfolk work, the first thing I did at the beginning of this semester was I tiled my studio floor with foam once again, which you can see here. my foam floor. There's a brand new platform. I'm really interested in doing these projects again and again, specifically like the platform, because in a lot of ways, like the outcome is like so incredibly specific to the site that it's conducted, in the sense of all of the marks that are embedded into the surface of the foam are the product of like the specific institution that I'm in the specific moment of time, surrounded by all of these people that are uh, contributing to the work and contributing to the process. So, yeah, I'm interested a lot in continually redoing the project over and over again to try to look at the different outcomes as reflective or documentative of these like specific sites and these specific moments and these specific people that are in interaction with the material. Um, Over here, you'll see lots of different tools on this little wall. A brand new fancy tool checkout sheet that I designed and printed. There's some new tools, apart from, you might recognize the shovel that was at Norfolk. There's this adorable little mallet that I made over the summer that I'm super, super proud of. I love to whack around my mallet. It's so fun to pound stuff with it. Here, my roller, you might be familiar with, that was at Norfolk, as well as my hoe made a return this semester. In the middle is this little broom that I made, um, which has quite a funny hairdo. The way I made it is I drilled a ton of little holes in this piece of plastic, and then I hot glued a bunch of like cheap synthetic rope from the Home Depot into all the holes, and then I frayed the ends of the rope. And it's the bristles are not very stiff. They bend very easily. Over time, it's kind of assumed this like really strange shape from like it sitting under its own weight. It's all bent out of shape. It's all full of dust and paint. Um, it's got quite the funny hairdo. It's got quite the character. Some close-ups of my roller. This is probably my favorite child out of all of the tools that I've created. Um, and I'm just really fascinated, like as I continue to use it and as others continue to use it, just looking at all of these layers of paint built up on the surface as really communicative of this sort of like history of every time that it's being used, and this like sort of like history of what it experiences. Um, and this like idea of these layers of color revealing or exposing the history of what objects experience is something that I'm like thinking a lot about with everything that I'm doing right now. So akin to what I did at Norfolk, I've uh, been making giant relief prints of my studio floor and my stage. Um, Something that I've been thinking a lot about since doing this project at Norfolk is trying to think more about what the role of aestheticization is within the practice, or like why is it that I'm interested in making these paintings of the surface of the foam. And I feel like what's changed since the first time that I did the project is like the iterative nature of how I'm doing it now, in the sense that I'll print a painting and then the tiled floor will go back in my studio. More things will happen to it, and then I'll print another painting with another color. And in a sense, um, I'm thinking about how each layer of color again is like documentative of these intermittent moments throughout the material's history. Um, So I'm thinking a lot about how maybe you could think of the imprint or the painting as a portrait in a sense of it trying to capture this discrete or like passing or fleeting moment in this larger passage of time. Um, and then the floor will always continue to go on and be a floor. More marks will be made. And in that sense, the painting or like every specific color is kind of this sort of brief passing part of a larger movement of the material. Um, there's just a close-up example of like some of the different marks that have accumulated on my floor. So like the caster wheels of my workbench draw these lines. There's some 5-gallon buckets that are kind of stamping these circles. All of these little impact craters are from the feet of my stool as I sit down. Um, and you'll notice these like funny shapes in the surface of the painting. There's this like half circular cutout on one side, and then there's this strange arcing shape on the other. Um, and in my studio, there's this door that kind of protrudes into the space and swings into the space. And then there's also this column that you can see on the other side of my studio. And, again, thinking about like the idea of like site specificity or like the idea of this painting maybe trying to like communicate a certain specific place that it came from. I'm really fascinated with the idea that this door and this column are kind of making these very direct one-to-one indexical marks that are sort of communicating this relationship between like the painting and the site. Um, Here is a picture of my most recent foam platform sitting on its storage rack in the hallway of my school. It's very funny. The operations management team in my department made me redesign the storage rack to be uh, more compliant with fire safety code, um, which is why there's this high visibility floor marking tape surrounding the perimeter of it. Um, I went on to McMaster-Carr and I searched for a long time to try to find like the ugliest, most like playful, queer sort of floor marking tape that I could possibly find. It's like absolutely hideous, this like purple and yellow striped tape, and I love it so much. It has like such a funny character to it. Um, yeah. So some images of the development of the film platform throughout the semester. And again, I'm like really interested in how each color is revealing what has happened since the last layer was printed. Um, so you end up with these different layers of color peeking through the surface of the foam, kind of indicating like these different moments in its past. Um, yeah. So all of these prints that I've been making throughout the semester culminated in these big scaffolding structures that I constructed. Um, this is totally in reference to Lisa Robertson's wonderful piece of poetry that we all read at Norfolk. Um, and I'm like so obsessed with that poem and I like read it so often. And it's like something I think about a lot uh, when I read it is like this notion that scaffolding in a lot of ways is like very selfless in the sense that it's brought into existence for like the sole purpose of supporting the construction or the repair of something else or like facilitating the repair of something else. And then it disappears after that. So it's like very selfless and very dependent on the sort of structure that it's encompassing. Um, And it's like within that context, I like think a lot about how when I'm walking around New York City and I see a building cocooned in scaffolding, and the way that the scaffolding acts as this sort of visual indicator or a signifier of that building's impermanence and transient nature, and the way that it's kind of revealing that building's need for care and maintenance and restoration. Um, so, I'm creating these scaffolds that are holding all of these imprints of my studio floor and my foam platform. Um, the idea being that the scaffold in this case is this structure that's helping to signify the the history that's being displayed within all of these layers of the image. Um, so here's the one of my studio floor. More images of that. Picture of Corrales, who came to visit my scaffolds. Um, moving on to another project. This is going to be uh, my main focus as I move into this semester. Um, this is a little tool cart that I made that holds a big 5-gallon bucket of this uh, bright fluorescent pink dirt. It's like kind of calling it high visibility dirt. Um, it's a very special mixture of white limestone sand, like what you'd find like on a golf course. This kind of like very uh, bright white sand, and then I'm adding a bunch of powdered bentonite clay to act as a binder, so it can be like packed very dense. And then I'm using a bunch of like ecologically safe water tracing dye that it's usually used to like pour into sewer systems or rivers to like visualize the flow of water. Um, to give it this like bright fluorescent magenta color. Um, and what I'm doing is I'm taking my little cart and I'm walking it around the sidewalks everywhere that I commute and go in the city. And I'm uh, packing the material into all the voids and cracks in the sidewalk that I encounter. Um, so in a lot of ways, like this project feels super full circle for me because I feel like this whole exploration of infrastructure started with like me looking and paying attention to the environment around me since I've started living in New York City. Um, and having this sort of like deep recognition for what our infrastructure experiences in like facilitating our doing and being in this urban environment. Like the sidewalks allow me to like walk places, the subway carries me from home to school and back every day, and it's doing so much for me. It's facilitating so much for me. It's allowed me to uh really find a sense of like community and home here. And at the same time, like the infrastructure that we use and that facilitates so much for us is also like struggling within that. Um, so I'm always interested in like the function of color and thinking about like for instance, the use of like high visibility colors within infrastructural design or like within like signage of trying to like being like a call for attention or trying to like create like a heightened awareness around something. Um, so the idea is like taking this bright fluorescent pink material and packing it into these sites of deterioration that would otherwise be invisible, in an effort to try to draw a heightened attention to what our pedestrian infrastructure experiences in performing its function. Um, and I think like what's so wonderful is like I look at all these spots on the ground and they all have like such a unique sort of character that's very specific to like how they came to be. Um, and that's like something that we would never really pay attention to. So I'm hoping that someone will look at this bright pink material on the ground and they'll maybe take a bit of time to notice the peculiarity and the sort of individuality of each one of these spots on the ground. That's about all I have to say. I'll finish scrolling. That's the last one. How do I stop?
I really liked one of your pieces reminded me of my favorite football team. So the one that you had of it being red, blue, and yellow. So the Steelers, they're diamonds, and the logo has like the meaning of yellow is cold, orange is iron ore, and then blue is steel scrap. So that's immediately what I thought of. But anyways, other than that, I think that would you call like you filling the like holes, the potholes and stuff like a performance? Because I feel like I don't know, what would you think? Or I don't know. I'm really interested in that one specifically.
Yeah,
That mhm,
I mean, that project's like still definitely in its like early stages.
uh-huh.
I'm not sure how it's exactly going to be displayed yet because like the act of me like going out and filling these holes in the ground, there is like a performative aspect to it. What I am going to do, if people are interested in tuning in, I'm going to have like an Instagram live of
Ooh.
I'm going to mount my phone to the little tool cart and I'm going to go live every time I go around and uh, restore our pedestrian infrastructure. So you'd be able to watch me do my work out in the field. But
Yeah.
anyways, like there'll be when I display this work, there'll be like a lot of like photo documentation and video documentation um displayed. The tool cart itself is kind of like this sculptural object. And then like I also have this little notebook that I keep where as I'm walking around, whenever I see like a spot on the ground, I'll take note of its location and its like some basic
Mhm.
characteristics. So like another way I'm thinking of displaying this work is to have almost like a spreadsheet or have this like really like sort of abstract log of data that I've been capturing, um, kind of like documenting all of these spots that I'm filling as well. Yeah.
I have a comment, but also hi Spencer. Just wanted to say hello. But I want to say on like your I feel like you have like there's like theatricality to your work that I'm like very drawn to because I think I've told you before, every time I see your work I'm like these are friends, like these are characters and like a play of sorts. But I think you explaining the work and also seeing everything like pre and post Norfolk, it's kind of like for me it kind of gives like a little circus vibes, not like in any literal sense but kind of like in conceptually. I think you mentioning like the mop of like the maid broom and like the characteristics of all of these like utilitarian objects, I can kind of see the way they kind of play. They can like easily be translated into like a theatrical like sense. I don't know why I'm imagining a play or like the way you document or do anything with this having to have like that play sense to it. But then also just wanted to say one thing about like the way you talk about like scaffolding having like that cradling and like ethos to it. I think that's like super like that's like where there's like a lot of, at least for me, I see like pain in that project is like scaffolding being this kind of like way you see empathy and pain, and then like the flip side to that being like the studio and like all of these objects being kind of like the fun and like the theater. So I don't know, I like how you're building this kind of language that has both ends of the spectrum, and it's not just like one thing in the middle. It's kind of like happiness and sadness all around your concept. Anyway.
Yeah, I think there's a point which is really interesting. Was thinking about your high visibility dirt trying to like fill in the potholes and cracks and stuff. It's like the act of it. If like just thinking of the material, like you have your high visibility dirt, which is basically sand plus like a clay binder, and it's not permanent. I feel like if it's like being washed by rain and stuff, it would just go away. If but the very same act, if you switch it to cement, then you're actually doing the repairing the site work like kind of like job. But this one is like kind of like really spraying the surface with kind of like an alternate form of marking paint, which is like going away. It's actually not doing the repairing job, but like it's solely purpose to like highlight it, kind of like, which is really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. It's like there's sort of like it's kind of like a display of solidarity, not in the sense of like I'm permanently repairing the spots, but more so in the sense of like trying to draw attention to like why they're struggling in the first place, you know? And it's like the other thing I'm thinking about a lot with like the impermanence of it, because it's like, yeah, they do like fade over time. Like people's feet track the color everywhere, and then like the rain washes it all away. Um, and it's like I'm thinking a lot about like the sort of acceleration of like larger timescales too, because it's like there's nothing that's permanent about concrete as well, you know, given by the fact that like these spots of deterioration are there to begin with. But it's
Mhm.
like watching the color sort of like fade over time is kind of this like acceleration of that deteriorative process that already is happening everywhere to begin with. Again, kind of like leaning into the idea of trying to um, draw like attention to something that's usually quite invisible just because it's at this like time scale that's so hard for us to like witness, you know.
Yes.
Well, thank you for sharing. um, do you want to go, Isaiah? Are you ready? Or
Yeah, I can be ready. I'm just gonna like share my screen and just go into my folder of like my documentation of my work. Is that okay? I feel like kind of low-key disrespectful, like for not
dude,
having a
don't
slideshow
worry.
together.
You're so fine.
It,
Like,
it would literally be like the same effect though as me putting a slideshow together, just going through the images.
That's
But
basically what I did
yeah.
too. I just like
okay,
pulled a bunch of images from my portable hard drive.
cool. Okay, so I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that. Okay. Present. Allow to share screen. Share this screen. Hey. Okay. Can y'all see?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Wow, you get to see my whole desktop. That's kind of crazy. Okay. So this was the first piece of the year that I did, like an installation situation. Y'all can see, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay. Uh, it's kind of about time, I guess, and like moving more towards a less linear view of time. And also thinking of time, yeah, as like left and right, up and down, or like timelines, basically. Um, and also like the process kind of changed a little bit too, like making things in bulk as well, like all these like foam pieces. I put them in a garbage bag and I like tumbled them like around like with cement and paint and stuff on them. Um, and I used chamoy for the light, kind of in an effort to replicate like it was. It was basically Citlali sent me a package, and there were little squinkle like candies in it, and they're like noodle situation. Not it's not a chamoy sauce, but it's like a red, sweeter sauce that you put on. So that sparked an idea in my head. That was kind of cool, and I think it looked pretty dope in the nighttime with the lights and shit. And like I used magnets to like hang it up. And the display space and also the windows behind it, I think, are pretty dope too. So there was that. And then, really, what I've been working a lot on is these like memory image situations. Um, so like my sister and I have like this archive of like all of these family photos from over the years that I tend to look at all the time. Whether it be just because like I'm missing home or like missing my family or like thinking I don't know about the past and stuff, but I feel like I'm looking at it more realistically and that I'm not trying to like paint this perfect picture of the past or like these people like everything was perfect and great. It's like they're like see-through tracings on this like tracing paper that's really delicate and like easily falls apart and it's like you know it's fake. I know it's fake or that it's not like obtainable all the way. Um and then what I do so like I'll trace it. I don't know if y'all can see the zoom in situation, but like I trace the image from my computer screen onto the paper, and then I cover it with joint compound, and then it's like a process of like scraping it off to reveal like the image below it again, and then I'll like spray paint on top of it. And there's like these cool particles and stuff that come out of that. And then I've also been wood burning. I make all these frames at school. So I started wood burning them and kind of like to me they look like particles that are like kind of like uh, expanding and then like compacting in the centers of things. Also thinking of like gradient as well, like as always. Thinking about fading. Um, more of these. And then I have these like little square patch situations that I'm also thinking about like when you have like a blank in your memory or something like that, like it kind of slows down the image or like the work. Like yeah, it like kind of changes the tempo up for me a little bit, which I thought was dope. This one is like a picture of my great grandma. I thought was pretty cool. And then for reference, I have the I have the images actually that I used for a lot of these pieces. So like they're all like these old family photos that I have of like tios and tias and like my cousins and my mom and my dad and um so yeah, like I traced these images onto the tracing paper and then covered them up and did the whole process and stuff with it. It's me and my sister, really fire costumes that my grandma made, my mother and us, my dad. Um so yeah, just going through the archive. And then from that, I did some of these bigger piece, or I did one big piece so far. Um, I think this like 4 feet by 4 feet, and uh, this is really about like my grandma's house and like my dad, and also my Theo Danny as well, who I never knew because he passed away before I was born, or maybe I was born and but I was like a newborn, so I didn't really know him. Um, but yeah, so it says originals underneath like the joint compound and stuff. Um, my sister and I would always like pillage our grandma's house for like clothes and stuff like that that like my dad or whoever had. And I have this one Adidas sweater, but it says original sport on the back of it. But I did some photoshopping and like I copied the font from that jacket and I wrote originals kind of just like talking about like my family members and stuff like that. And then I did some more wood burning on the sides. So this, it says Danny, and that actually is taken from this image from this video. My Theo Danny was a DJ, and here we go. And there's this video of this slip mat of his for a turntable where he had wrote his name on it. And so I took that, like I paused the video, screenshot it, whatever. And then I wood burnt it on to the side, to the frame. Thought that was pretty dope. And then I did that same sort of like gradient situation as well with like all the dots that took forever to do by hand. I feel like I've been talking forever. Oh, I did this cool drawing towards the beginning of the semester as well, where I drew Spider-Man. And I feel like this was the beginning of me kind of delving into like the idea of memories and like the past and like stuff that's not completely obtainable. And also like this idea one of my professors put me on to, like when you like recall a memory, instead of like digging through like the file cabinet and just like perfectly recalling it, what if we're like remaking that connection every time we think about something? So that's what this piece, I was kind of thinking about that. And it's like very like, to me, 2D work right now is like very aspirational, and also like drawing and stuff like that is like all very aspirational. So yeah, it's more so about like, if y'all could see it in person, like I was pressing really hard with the colored pencil to sort of like, I don't know the word, like inscribe into the surface of it. And it's more so about that. Yeah. So there's that. Yeah, that's it. I'm gonna stop presenting now. Thank you.
I thought of an artist, which is like low key so off the mark, but I wanted to share it anyway, just because it made me think of you, because you were talking about like family photos and like kind of it came to me when you were talking about the turntable and like taking that and also taking like language from the back of like a sweater. This is was it Alfonso Gonzalez Jr. I think, but you can barely see it. But this is, he has like a show up
Yeah,
right
I
now.
follow him.
Yes.
Yeah,
But
his
like
shit is fire.
it's like, so this is like an overt version of like what you're doing, because I feel like what you're doing has a lot more sense. Not to say that he doesn't have sensitivity, but there's a different type of sensitivity that you're like using with like such like with what you're seeing and what you're not seeing. It's kind of like the it like oscillates between being like you standing right before and being like, oh, I recognize that as Spider-Man, to being like far away and being like, there is like a shape that I'm not quite able to make out. But I thought of him because you're using a lot of like taking from different places that are like intimate to you, and I thought that would be helpful to share.
Thank you.
I know you said that you wanted to maybe, I mean, like looking forward, you wanted to start trying to use color into your work. Can you sort of like explain, why, or like what are you thinking after you've done all this? Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like if I've set up this sort of like logic of where the black and white gradient, well, it's not black and white because there's so much gray area in it. Just that gradient, the grayscale stuff being so referential to the past, and even like to like black and white photography. Like so much of that is based on memory and things that are in the past. I think of like where can color fit in, and like maybe that is more so like a expression of imagination or something like that, or just like in the moment. I don't know, adding some more contrast to stuff and more. Yeah, I just been wanting to use more color in my work recently, so I'm thinking of doing sort of the same process with like the tracings and stuff like that with charcoal, but then once I do all that, like painting over it or applying color over it somehow, maybe not directly with a paintbrush, but I've been thinking maybe spray paint or airbrushing or some way of putting some color into it as well to kind of show like from the past and then me flip it into the present or the future or whatever. Um, yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I hadn't really noticed that you like hadn't been using color until like I've seen your work throughout the whole semester, right? And it's just like barely now that I remember, damn, you really put chamois onto your work and like that bright red or like that deep red does so much. I don't know like what exactly it does, but it just like after seeing all your work throughout the semester, it's just like, whoa, wait, whoa, use color, you know? And so I think I'm excited to
Yeah,
see a little bit more.
I used to use color all the time and stuff, so I think now that I'm coming back to things with more purpose and intention, it like makes it more impactful. Um, I was looking at a lot of Popel's work like over the summer from Norfolk and even previously before that, but really getting into Popel's work, and I wouldn't like. I feel like the way that he uses color in his work a lot of the time is very like, whoa, that's interesting. Like, yeah, I'm trying to think of examples, but he's definitely an artist who I just always think about when he uses color in his work in different ways. Thanks for listening, though. I appreciate it.
I think it's my turn. Okay. I'm gonna keep it quick so we can get out of here by 4. But
Do not keep it quick, as long as you want.
okay, I'm gonna so these are some drawings. I like got back and these were like kind of moments that I was like grappling with. Like I got back and I don't know if you guys had the same experience where you like tried to tell your friends what happened over the summer and I was like, y'all would never understand. Like y'all were not there. So kind of dealing with that and trying to keep in contact with people was one thing. But I guess I'll skip that one. This was kind of a moment for me when I remember it was like I hung out with Issa and Sophie, and it was like one of like the first like hangouts when we all got back. At least for me, I was on Sophie's doorstep, like, please, Lord, talk to me. Like I need to like process this, and kind of having that moment of like we all went through something. What was that? And how do we like keep like existing at the same wavelength? Um, and then just reminiscing again and thinking about like what was it that I was like grappling onto in that moment, and like I was making assemblages and I liked my TV, but I also really liked engaging with other people with what I already like doing, and how do I bring that into like that sense of community was something I never experienced beforehand, and how do I like kind of either foster community experiences with my work at my school and in the future. So this was kind of like me trying for something. It never happened, but I was kind of planning something called like a circumstance. It would basically be like a gathering at like me or someone's house, and it would be centered around kind of a theme. And like for the first one, I was like the theme of circumstance and making everyone be in a certain situation together and having like conversations about X, Y, and Z, just like how we all got to know each other and like how the circumstances played out. And then on the right, I was like really obsessed with the Swoon by Janine Antoni, which was like a piece she did with like lights and cameras and kind of tricking the viewer. But I really liked like she had this was like on the back of one of the flyers, and I was like, this is really nice, like a poem. It's like mingled breath tangled shadows beloved. I don't know, I thought it was very inspiring and poetic. It never happened, but it was something I was like kind of working towards, like making events and experiences for people with work and having it not just be this is my artwork, but having it be this is a community experience. These are just some images I took in my room as I was like, I kind of like transferred things and tried to make my room a studio, and I was dealing with like an identity crisis and things of clothing and throwing things away. So I got really into like taking pictures to like capture those moments. And then this is just like, I use this slides before this to like just make things happen. But I was like grappling with a lot of things about like religion and like the self and like history. And so like basically this is like a ring that my dad got well for like running track in high school. And I was like, how do I like take on this like past sense of self that like a father figure had, and like what does that mean for like femininity, masculinity, all these things. And then I come back to community over and over again. And like I think I leaned really heavily on just the fact that I needed to be around people when I got back. And so that's like a lot of this was just like kind of recording these memories and holding these memories to be able to exist for the time being. You got like the homies, you know, the vibes. But yeah, and then after these experiences, I was kind of obsessed with making drawings that were dealing with all these emotions of trying like to communicate with people, and then trying to like figure out what was it that was hindering me from being able to talk one-on-one with other human beings. But yeah, so I have like these, this is like based on like the Malcolm in the Middle kitchen, just like overt like Americana themes, and then kind of always having like two characters interfacing in a weird way. And then yeah, that's just, I don't worry about that. I was making assemblages. So again, I was working with like photos from the summer and beforehand, and like basically working through all of these things. And these were two moments before I kind of landed on the final, which was this piece. And yeah, I just kind of was using a lot of just images from like youth, childhood, friendship, and trying to make sense of everything with the time of being alive and being 21, and like confusion and all that stuff. So very like a lot of coming of age energy and like teen angst. So for this piece, actually I'll speak on this a bit more. I didn't include it because I wasn't like very happy with it, and also it's like a video and I'm not going to sit here and make you watch a video. But I made a room made of plastic bags, like very much like how I did like my process club, but it was like enclosed and smaller, and it was kind of like it only fit the amount of people that I knew were going to be in there. And I basically put this assemblage up, and then I projected on top of it, so you couldn't really tell what it was. So I liked playing with the fact that there was like so much detail that you wouldn't have access to because there's something being projected on top, and you wouldn't have you would feel like not allowed to look closer because there's a video being projected and you didn't want to block the video. So kind of playing with visibility in that sense. And then after I did that project, I was like, I'm not satisfied with how that sense of performance played out. I just want to lay it all out for the audience. And so I kind of compiled all of the drawings and everything I made during the semester and kind of put it out, and just let people look at it and let people get up and close and personal with it. And just kind of like I've been told I bare my soul a lot, which I don't think I like set out to do. I just kind of want to create things, and then I put them out, and then people tell me they're really vulnerable, and I'm like, okay. But this was kind of like the end of the semester for me. And then just to get closer with it, these are like tiny moments where you could go up and look at it, but the critique time was so short that like you would never be able to see all of the things at once. And then this is where I'm currently heading, which is doing lots of research, aka watching lots of movies. And there's like there's so much like I got a Criterion subscription, and there's like a whole section of like queer media and like lots of different just like things in culture that I was never exposed to. So these are like screenshots from different things. And basically what I want to do for my thesis, to kind of take all of these like themes, ideas, coming of age, all of this stuff, is how do I make this into something cohesive and something digestible? And I was like, okay, I think making a book would be a good way to take all of these drawings and all of this form of basically communicating little moments through drawings, and how do I make a through line with that, and how do I add language to all of these different scenes. So like an example would be like, if this was a scene, how I would probably have to have text and like explain what are these people saying, what are they doing, and how does it relate to a larger narrative. And I think I'd like to make a book for my thesis and like talk to people and have the book be kind of like an excuse to be able to go up to people and say, hey, I'm making a book for my thesis. Can I talk to you? Can I like interview you for it? And then since we all have like exhibition space for our theses, I wouldn't exhibit a book because I'd be like that's like a completely different thing. I'd probably like here in the middle, I would like to explode the book, at least like so to speak, explode the narrative and all of the drawings I make during the semester for the book, and then make a huge wall piece where people can interact and go up and have it be kind of closer to the performative things I do, where there's like mirrors and cameras and like you are like dealing with yourself while you're also dealing with the things you are looking at, kind of deal. But that's pretty much everything I had. I sped through it a bit, but I think that's like the general overview of what I'd like to do moving forward. Yeah.
I feel like book makes so much sense because, you know, like looking back at the experience of like going through your installation space at Process Club, the way that you like set up these installation slash like performative type of scenarios or encounters, um where it's like this like encounter with all of this material that feels like extremely like intimate to your experience in a lot of ways. Like I feel like the motif of like the sketchbook is like kind of like really central to like a lot of the aesthetics surrounding what you do. And it's like the sort of like intimacy of something like a sketchbook is like so fascinating. Um and yeah, I feel like translating that to a book like makes so much sense because it'll cultivate a similar sort of encounter between like the viewer and the work, I think. Yeah.
I was just thinking like different ways, like different densities of packing like information, because you do a lot of documentation, and that's like kind of like my like your takeaway of a certain period of time is say like, oh, maybe today or this week concluded in one sentence. It's like how concise you want it to be. What would you include or what would you exclude from what you choose to pick from, like whatever like is left, like say you drawing and then stuff. I was just thinking like you made your assemblage and you project over it, and there's so many details on there, yet projection is going on, people cannot approach and look at it, but yet they know the presence of details. So it's like kind of interesting. Also thinking of just compiling it into a book format. I feel like book is, I mean, digital stuff, like there are like a million information in my phone because it's chip based. I feel like book is like pre-electronic, one of the most densely packed information stuff, because you're like, oh, like there are like just a million things in this book, and then if I just open this much, and then it's like totally different information. I feel like it's dense and you have so many things to explore. It also gives you just like ways to, it's more easier to misalign or to like ignore something. I didn't see this or didn't see that. So it's kind of like different ways of just, I'm just thinking like information, how it's packed, the denser it is, like then the viewer can read the book and they have their takeaway, which is part of the book. And the book itself is your takeaway from a much, much broader kind of stuff, how it's kind of extracted kind of thing. I'll just, yeah.
Yeah, there's something like I mean, like again with the installation, it's like the sort of like paper saturation of like how much information you're giving us is like you have this sort of encounter where like you only take away like how deeply you're sort of like look at like a particular thing. And it's like I remember like specifically like the installation, like process club at Norfolk of there being just like a sketchbook, and it's like you would never have enough time to like look through like every page and actually like parse all of that information. And it's like, yeah, a similar sort of thing of like having this book format of like sort of like scrubbing through it and like looking at all of these like very sort of casual sketch like depictions of like your experiences is like it's like presented in this way with like the sort of like casual aesthetics of a sketch of it being like super like hyper saturated like that, I guess. Um yeah.
Thanks, guys. What the hell? I will be taking these, and thank you. I was wondering if you guys would be down before we all part. Everyone could say a goal that they have, either for the week or for the month or for the semester. Everyone could go around and say a goal. Yeah.
You first.
Bro. Okay, I'll go first. I guess a goal I have for this week. Surface level, I should probably finish reading the books that I borrowed from the library because they are due this week. But then on a deeper level, probably start. I have lots of like writing about what I want to do. I think I just want to have one sheet that says I'm going to do this by this date, and then commit to the bid. But yeah.
So a goal, it's just a very straightforward big goal that I have it's very general. Everyone wants to do this and like, oh, develop their practice, but I want to experiment. I feel like I had a really good art history class this semester, and that has just blown my mind. And I feel like I can stray away from being something so traditional. And also just learning about certain artists, like specifically Askell. I don't know if you guys have heard of the performance group, but thinking beyond the norms of like what being a Chicano artist means, or Chicana artist. And it's just like, you don't have to paint a certain way to be part of the movement sort of thing. For example, like painting like pre-Columbian art, or like, oh, paint this Aztec goddess, or like, we don't have to all do that, you know? And so I feel like that has sort of liberated me from this pressure that I feel, not from anyone in specific, but just from all the eyes that have been on me for the work that I've been successful from. And I feel like there's just a sort of risk that I'm headed towards, because I don't know if people are gonna like just stop liking my work because of this new direction I'm going to. I'm basically just want to think about my paintings differently. Like for example, my first project I want to do is a painting that you could walk through. So I want to like gesso a canvas on both its sides and do the painting on both its sides, and then cut it into strips and hang it like an installation. I've never done an installation or anything before, but I want to do something that one can experience, that like it's always a no that you shouldn't be touching a painting in the gallery or something, but it's just like I want to invite people, I want to invite community to feel this sort of thing. Anyway, so just experiment with my painting is what I want to do. Yeah.
Super short-term goal is to get through first day of classes tomorrow. Survive that. Slightly longer term goal is to hopefully not get arrested for vandalism trying to repair the sidewalks in New York City. And yeah, I think maybe another goal is to like try to make more of a social effort within the practice of trying to work with people and organize and try to figure out different ways to try to get the folks that are around me to contribute and collaborate and use my tools, because it makes me so happy when people use my tools, because everyone uses my tools and they're imbued with so much amazing character for what they do for other people, and that's like such a wonderful thing, and I want to try to work with people to try to make that happen more.
I have my goals for the next semester, like I don't know, half a year, a year. It's kind of general, but I want to read more books and watch films. I haven't been doing so. Last semester was crazy, and I just like keep myself alive is very hard already. So like no books, but I'm also not like book person, but I just need to be super paying attention to the book, and then the book would have a chapter possibly at the start that lures me in for me to want to read the rest of it, and then I'm on the way, and it's good. And so that, and then second, I want to journal every day about what happened. I feel like sometimes I'm just like, oh, like a month went by, what did I do? And then my mind went blank, and then that's bad. Like, no. Third, about making art, I feel like I am out of school now, and there's so much stuff happening. I am gonna make a commitment to make work. Yes, as simple as that, because I feel like there is a risk that I temporarily quit, but I should not. I need to make more, just experiment with things, I guess. I feel like, yeah, just being open, having time to just like try a bunch of different stuff, even if it's not working extremely prototypical, but it's like great. Yes, and I also want to solve my identity problem. I've been attributing my work to just a bunch of random individuals under the collective's name. I think I want to kind of like try to solve it. That like I want to make this thinking of identity, because I kind of still don't want to put stuff under my own name. I want to like have this identity thing like a framework, like infrastructure that carries my work. I want to, like, when you build the city, before the business and buildings can be built, you have to lay the power lines and then the water stuff. I want to make the identity infrastructure robust enough for me to keep going for the rest, say like 5 years, whatever, but I might change stuff at any time. But I just want to like figure this out so I can rely on it for a long while without the need to like bulldoze it and then try to change it. That's it.
My goals: trying to have a solo show somewhere really bad, or just do more group shows. I have a group show that I'm gonna be part of in May. That should be cool. But I'm just trying to get a solo somewhere. Trying to keep the crib clean this semester, because that shit always goes terribly once the semester picks up. So I'm trying to keep my living space nice. Trying to read more books, definitely, because my attention span is so terrible. Stay off the Instagram. Stay off the wasting time shit. Um, trying to draw more in my sketchbook for some reason. Um, yeah, and just kind of start to plan out the next phase, I guess, like starting to transition out of school. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I feel like recording this session is good, because maybe I can just rewatch it sometimes, or when I'm doing work as a background to just like listen to it again. Sounds fun.
It's also good, I don't know, like to hear yourself talk. I hate hearing myself talk, but I feel like I just blacked out when I presented.
Mhm.
And I feel like maybe in like 3 weeks from now, we could all look back and be like, oh, that's what I said I was gonna do. But
Yeah, I always find my own recorded voice weird, but getting used to it.
I'll see y'all around, if that's okay to say.
When our
Yes.
paths
Love you
will
all.
cross again. Our paths will cross again.
Facts. Okay, love y'all. Have a good start to y'all
Hope y'all have a
semester.
good night. Mhm.
Good luck for you, Paola, tomorrow.
Thank you. I need it.
Bye.
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 Bye.